The war room of the Krethok flagship Devastator hummed with anticipation as Commander Jalver stood before the assembled officers of the Confederacy's most powerful fleet, his scaled hands gesturing toward the holographic display that showed a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star-honored warriors. His voice carrying the confidence of a commander who had conquered 17 worlds without significant resistance. I present to you our next target, the planet these primitives call Earth. The hologram rotated slowly, showing continents and oceans, orbital stations that looked pathetically simple compared to Krethok architecture, and a handful of ships that barely qualified as military vessels in the eyes of the SA's. Confederacy Vice Commander Throck leaned forward, his triple eyes focusing on the data streams flowing beneath the planetary image. Their technology is crude, he observed with barely concealed disdain. They have only achieved faster than light travel within the last 50 of their years, and their weapon systems are based on projectile technology that our ancestors abandoned millennia ago. Shalvar nodded, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among his species indeed. But do not let their primitive status fool you into complacency. They have resources we need, and their location makes them strategically valuable for expansion into this spiral arm of the galaxy. Intelligence Officer Krill activated another display, showing economic projections and resource assessments. The planet is rich in heavy metals, rare earth elements, and most importantly, water in quantities that exceed most core worlds, she explained methodically. Their population of approximately 8 billion would provide adequate labor once properly subdued, and their industrial capacity, while primitive, shows potential for conversion to Confederacy standards. The assembled officers murmured their approval, calculations already running through their minds about promotion, opportunities, and resource allocations that would follow a successful conquest. What of their military capabilities? Asked Admiral Vrex, the oldest member of the war council and the only one who seemed less than enthusiastic about the campaigns. Vor's expression hardened slightly at the question. Minimal at best, he replied with a dismissive wave. Their largest warship mass is less than 2 million tons, barely a third the size of our destroyers, and their fleet numbers fewer than 300 vessels, most of which are stationed in their home system, with only token presences in the 4 colony systems they have established. Krill brought up tactical assessments compiled from long-range observation and intercepted communications. Their defensive strategy appears to rely on fixed orbital platforms around their home world in major colonies, with mobile fleets providing support. A configuration that worked adequately against asteroids and space debris, but will crumble before a coordinated military assault. They have no shields, Vrex pressed, his concern evident despite attempts to mask it. None that our sensors can detect. Jolver confirmed they rely on physical armor metals and composites that are plasma. Cannons will cut through like solar wind through vacuum. The commander brought up a simulation, showing the planned attack pattern. We will emerge from hyperspace at the edge of their system and broadcast our intentions. Clearly surrender or face annihilation, he outlined with practiced precision. When they refuse, as their intercepted communications suggest they will, we will demonstrate our superiority by destroying their outer system infrastructure. The hologram showed Krethok warships systematically eliminating mining stations, research outposts, communications relays in the outer reaches of the Sol system. This demonstration will serve 2 purposes, Jalver continued. First, it will show them the futility of resistance, and second, it will draw their fleet away from Earth, allowing our secondary force to establish orbital superiority over the homeworld itself. Throck studied the simulation with approval. Once we control their orbital space, their cities and industrial centers become hostages. They will have no choice but to accept our terms. The entire operation should conclude within 3 cycles. Jalver declared confidently, we have allocated 10,000 warships for this campaign, a force that has proven sufficient to conquer civilizations far more advanced than these humans. Admiral Vrex remained silent, but his unease was palpable to those who knew him well enough to read the subtle shifts in his posture. You have concerns, Admiral? Jalver asked, unable to keep a slight edge from his voice. Rex chose his words Carefully, I have been reviewing the historical records of humanity's development, and there are certain patterns that give me pause. They have been engaged in warfare continuously throughout their recorded history, not just with other species, but with themselves. A sign of their primitive nature. Throck interjected dismissively, perhaps. Rex conceded, but they have also demonstrated remarkable adaptability in their conflicts there. Technological development has accelerated exponentially in the last 2 centuries, and their capacity for violence against their own kind suggests they may be more dangerous than our assessments indicate. Jalver's mandibles clicked in irritation. Their internal conflicts are irrelevant to species that cannot unite against external threats. Is no threat at all, and our intelligence indicates significant political divisions among their governments. What none of them knew, what their intelligence had failed to uncover, was that those political divisions had vanished the moment humanity detected the Krethok fleet's approach across the galaxy. Older civilizations watched the Confederacy's preparations with a mixture of horror and grim fascination in the crystalline halls of Silith Prime. Ambassador Viren stood before the Council of Echoes, her luminescent form pulsing with distress. The Krethok are making a terrible mistake, she pleaded. We must warn them before it is too late. The eldest of the council, a being who had witnessed the rise and fall of 100 civilizations, responded with a voice like distant thunder. Cannot interfere. The laws of contact forbid intervention in conflicts between spacefaring species. But you know what humanity is capable of. Varian insisted desperately. We have studied their history, their psychology. They are not like other young races, which is precisely why we must not interfere. The elder replied sadly, let the Krethok learn what we learned 12,000 years ago, when we attempted to bring humanity into our empire by force. In the deep vaults beneath the council chamber, records sealed for millennia contained images of Silithai warships broken and scattered across a planet that had barely discovered agriculture, proof that humanity's capacity for defensive violence transcended their technological level. The Vorum consensus, ancient beyond measure, observed from their megastructures orbiting dead stars and calculated probabilities with computing power that rivaled small suns. Every simulation ended the same way. The builders, mysterious and withdrawn, simply adjusted their own defensive perimeters and increased patrols along their borders, preparing for the inevitable refugees. Meanwhile, the Krethok fleet began its journey toward the Sol system, their commanders confident in their superiority and completely unaware that they were about to make the greatest strategic blunder in galactic history. 10,000 warships, representing the might of an empire that had dominated this region of space for 2,000 years, set course for a small blue world whose inhabitants had been preparing for exactly this moment since the day they first looked up at the stars and wondered what waited among them. The Krethok armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system in a display calculated to inspire terror and awe. 10,000 warships materializing in formation, their hulls gleaming with the threat of overwhelming force. Commander Jalver stood on the bridge of the Devastator, savoring the moment of triumph he expected would follow within hours. Open a channel to the planet Earth, he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of conquest. Let them hear the voice of their new masters. The communications officer worked his console and nodded. Channel open. Commander broadcasting on all frequencies. The humans used. Jalver straightened, preparing his declaration of dominance. But before he could speak, a calm human voice filled the bridge. Unidentified fleet. This is Earth's defense command, the voice stated with remarkable composure given the overwhelming force that had just appeared on their doorstep. You have entered the Sol system without authorization, and your formation suggests hostile intent. Please state your purpose and maintain your current position while we process your arrival. A stunned silence fell over the Devastator's bridge, the Krethok officers exchanging confused glances at the audacity of the responsilover. S. mandibles clicked with irritation. They dare to give us orders, he hissed before activating the channel. Primitive humans, you will surrender your world and all colonial holdings to the Krethok. Confederacy immediately resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization, and this is your only warning. There was a pause on the other end, lasting perhaps 5 seconds, before the human voice responded with the same unsettling calm. Message received and denied you. Have entered our space illegally and committed an act of war by threatening our homeworlds. You have 1 hour to begin withdrawing your fleet, or we will interpret your presence as confirmation of hostile intent. Throck leaned close to Jalvar, his voice low. Commander, their response is illogical. Do they not comprehend the disparity in our forces? Jalvar's eyes narrowed dangerously. Perhaps they require a demonstration, he growled before addressing his weapons officer. Target the mining installations orbiting the 6th planet and destroy them. Show these primitives what defiance costs. The weapons officer hesitated only a fraction of a second before complying. Targets acquired. Firing plasma bolts lanced across the void, striking 3 major mining stations orbiting Saturn. Massive industrial complexes that represented decades of human expansion into their outer system. The stations erupted in brilliant explosions, visible even from Earth as new stars briefly flaring in the night sky. On the Devastator, the Krethok officers waited for the inevitable panic, the desperate pleas for mercy, the chaotic surrender that always followed such demonstrations. Instead, Earth Defense Command responded with words that would echo through galactic history. Hostile action confirmed. All personnel evacuate outer system installations immediately. Earth Defense Command is activating protocol. Omega, this is not a drill. What happened next caught the Krethok completely off guard. Across the Sol system, from the asteroid belt to the orbital platforms around Jupiter and Saturn, the evacuation began with a precision that suggested it had been practiced countless times within 2 hours. Every human civilian in the outer system was aboard. Fast-moving evacuation ships burning toward the inner planets at accelerations that should have crushed organic life. Impossible, breathed Krill from her intelligence station. Our models suggested evacuation would take at least a standard week. They accomplished it in a fraction of that time. But the evacuation was only the first surprise. As the last civilian ships cleared the danger zones, hundreds of contacts began appearing on Krethok sensors throughout the system. Commander, the sensor officer called out urgently, we are detecting massive energy signatures. Defense platforms are powering up across the entire system, and their numbers far exceed our intelligence estimates. The holographic display updated frantically, showing platform after platform coming online, their reactor signatures blazing like tiny suns as weapon systems charged. How many? Jalvar demanded, a cold feeling beginning to form in his core. Current count is 872 and still rising, the officer reported, his voice shaking slightly. They were hidden, Commander, using passive cooling and minimal power signatures until activation. Admiral Vrex would remain silent until now. Spoke quietly. They were waiting for us. Jalvar refused to show uncertainty before his officers. It matters not. A platforms against 10,000 warships. The mathematics still favor us overwhelmingly. He ordered the fleet to advance, maintaining formation. Projecting confidence, he was beginning not to feel the human fleet emerged from behind Earth's moon. From the shadows of Mars, from positions throughout the inner system, 317 ships, just as intelligence had predicted. But they moved with a grace that seemed impossible for vessels of their size. Analyze their propulsion. Jalvar ordered sharply. The science officer studied the readings with growing confusion. Commander, their acceleration profiles are abnormal. They are using what appears to be continuous thrust drives at power levels that should exhaust their fuel within hours. Yet they show no signs of propellant depletion. Fusion drives, Krill supplied. Pulling up technical assessments, they are essentially flying bombs, using their own engines as weapons if necessary, and their thrust-to-weight ratios exceed our heavy fighters. The first engagement began as the Krethok Vanguard reached the orbit of Mars. The human ships opened fire with weapons the Confederacy had dismissed as primitive railguns that used electromagnetic acceleration instead of energy. Weapons what the Krethok had not anticipated was the velocity those railguns could achieve. Projectiles screaming through space at a significant fraction of light speed struck Krethok shields and simply punched through them. The kinetic energy overwhelming defensive systems designed to dissipate heat and radiation. The first Krathok destroyer simply came apart, its hull unable to withstand the multiple impacts that struck it within milliseconds, then another. And another evasive maneuvers. Jalva roared, but the human targeting systems tracked their movements with computer precision. And the railgun projectiles were simply too fast to dodge at combat ranges. The defense platforms opened fire next, adding their weapons to the barrage, creating a crossfire that caught the Krathok vanguard in a devastating trap within the first 30 minutes of combat. The Confederacy lost 307 ships and had not destroyed a single human vessel fall back. Yulver ordered, his confidence evaporating, regroup at the outer marker and reassess. But falling back proved more dangerous than advancing. The human ships pursued with relentless aggression, their crews displaying a willingness to close to ranges that the Krathok considered suicidally close. And when Krathok plasma cannons finally began scoring hits, disabling human vessels, those crews did the unthinkable, Commander. The sensor officer screamed, "The damaged human ship is overloading its reactor deliberately, is on a collision course." The crippled human destroyer, its hull torn open and venting atmosphere, accelerated directly into a cluster of Krathok cruisers and detonated its fusion core at point-blank range. Explosion vaporized the human ship and took 4 Krathok vessels with it. "They're insane." Throk gasped, staring at the tactical display in horror. "They sacrificed themselves just to destroy 4 of our ships." Admiral Vrex's voice was grim, not insane, determined. "Beyond anything we have encountered, and now we know why the elder races did not warn us. They wanted us to learn this lesson ourselves." Across the solar system, Earth Defense Command sent out a message that would be intercepted by civilizations across the galaxy. A simple statement that carried the weight of a species that had clawed its way to the top of their planet's evolutionary ladder. Through sheer bloody-minded refusal to quit. "You have attacked our home. We will make you regret that choice." Jalver stared at the tactical display, watching his fleet's casualty count climb while human losses remained minimal. And for the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never experienced in battle: fear in Mars. The massive shipyards that the Krathok had planned to capture and convert to their own use shifted into a production mode that seemed to defy physical possibility. Construction crews working in round-the-clock. Ships began assembling warships using modular construction techniques, building vessels in weeks that should have taken years, and in the dark between stars, messages raced outward toward human colonies, dozens of light years away. Colonies that the Krathok did not even know existed, carrying a simple imperative: "Come, home Earth needs you." Commander Jalver had reorganized his fleet into defensive formations, abandoning the quick strike he had planned in favor of a methodical advance that would, in theory, overwhelm human defenses through sheer numbers and firepower. The theory lasted approximately 6 hours before it collided with reality. The Krathok forces pushed toward Mars, intending to neutralize the shipyards there and cut off human reinforcement. But the defenders had transformed the entire orbital space around the red planet into a killing field. Human ships darted in and out of engagement range, using their superior acceleration to strike and retreat before the Krathok could bring their superior numbers to bear. And when Confederacy vessels finally succeeded in disabling human warships, those ships became weapons in their own right. Vice Commander Throk watched in disbelief as yet another crippled human vessel detonated its reactor, the expanding ball of fusion fire consuming 2 Krathok frigates. "This is not warfare," he stated, his voice hollow with shock. "This is mass suicide. With extra steps, it is effective suicide," Admiral Vrex corrected grimly, studying the tactical displays that showed Krathok casualties climbing, while human losses, though significant, remain sustainable. Every disabled human ship takes an average of 3 hours with it when they detonate, and their crews volunteer for this without. Intelligence Officer Krill was compiling psychological profiles based on intercepted human communications, her analysis growing more disturbing with each report. "Commander, I am detecting a pattern in their communications that defies rational analysis when human crews receive damage that would normally prompt surrender negotiations. They instead bid farewell to their families and thank each other for the honor of dying. Together, Jalver slammed his scaled fist against his command console honor. What honor is there in pointless death? To them it is not pointless, Brex explained quietly. They are buying time for their evacuation ships, for their shipyards, for their homeworld, and they consider that a worthy trade across the galaxy. Civilizations monitored the battle unfolding in the Sol system with growing alarm. The Silithi Council of Echoes convened an emergency session, reviewing combat footage transmitted by their distant observation posts. The humans are fighting exactly as they did 12,000 years ago, Ambassador Viren reported. Her luminescent form pulsing with distress. They give no quarter. They expect no mercy. And they adapt to every tactic the Krithok ploy within hours of first encountering it. The Council's eldest member projected images of ancient battles fought on primitive Earth, showing human warriors fighting, to the last breath, against Silithi exploration. Forces that had attempted to claim the planet for resource extraction. We learned this lesson at terrible cost. Humanity views any threat to their home world as an existential crisis and responds with every weapon at their disposal, holding nothing in reserve. The Krithok are learning it now. Another council member observed, and they are paying an even higher price than we did in the Sol system. The battle entered its third week, and the galaxy witnessed something unprecedented in modern warfare. Mars shipyards, operating at capacity that should have torn the facilities apart from stress, continued producing warships at an impossible rate. Modular construction allowed human engineers to assemble vessels from prefabricated components, using techniques that sacrificed elegance for speed. Krithik strategic analysts watched in frustrated disbelief as human production actually outpaced their destruction rate. How are they doing this? Jalver demanded, staring at reports showing new human ships joining the battle faster than his forces could eliminate the old ones. Our intelligence indicated their industrial capacity was limited. Krill reviewed the data with shaking hands. They have converted every industrial facility in there. System 2 war production, she reported numbly. Factories that produced civilian vehicles now produce warship components. Orbital foundries that refined metals for construction now forge armor. Plating. Even their food production has been militarized, with agricultural ships delivering supplies directly to combat vessels. Total war, Vrex said. Quietly, they have mobilized their entire civilization for this conflict. It was a concept the Krathic Confederacy had never truly encountered. Wars of conquest were supposed to be fought by professional militaries, while civilian populations continued their normal lives, waiting to be conquered or liberated as circumstances dictated. Humanity had thrown that doctrine into the nearest starvery. Human with relevant skills had been drafted into war. Service engineers designed weapons. Factory workers produced munitions. Scientists developed countermeasures to Krithok technology. And even civilians contributed by maintaining infrastructure and supporting the fleet through logistics networks that seemed impossible in their efficiency then. The colony fleets began arriving, the first to reach the Sol system was the Tau Ceti Expeditionary Force. 47 ships that had been traveling for 3 weeks at maximum, burned to answer Earth's calls. Oliver watched them emerge from hyperspace and felt a chill run through his body when his sensors analyzed their hulls. Commander, the science officer reported, with barely controlled panic, the colony ships are coated in a material we cannot identify. Our weapons are striking them, but the damage is repairing itself within minutes. Impossible. Confirmed, sir. They appear to be using some form of programmable matter that reconstructs damaged sections using available materials from impacts and surrounding space debris. The Tau Ceti colonists had spent 20 years isolated from Earth, forced to innovate to survive in a harsh stellar environment, and they had developed nanotechnology that turned their ships into self-healing organisms. They hit the Krithok flank like a hammer, their vessels absorbing damage that would have crippled conventional ships and continuing to fight. 2 days later, the Proxima Centauri contingent arrived, bringing 73 ships in a surprise that fundamentally changed the tactical situation. Minds. The Krithok sensor officer screamed, "They have deployed weapons that are actively hunting our ships." The Proxima colonists had developed autonomous weapon systems minds that could track targets, predict evasive maneuvers, and coordinate with each other to create inescapable killboxes. Screethic ships began dying in clusters as the intelligent minds herded them into overlapping fields of fires. Halvar's fleet was down to 6,200 ships, having lost nearly 40% of its strength, and they still had not reached Mars orbit. Then the Barnard Starfleet arrived, and the Krethok learned what true terror felt like. The 98 ships from Barnard's Star opened fire with directed energy weapons that burned through Krethok's shields as if they were not there. Beams of coherent light so intense they sublimated armor plating directly into plasma. Their targeting is perfect. Throck gasped as another squadron evaporated under the onslaught. They are not missing. Every shot is a kill. The Barnard colonists had pioneered advanced computing systems to manage their complex stellar environment, and those systems now calculated firing solutions with inhuman precision throughout the galaxy. The elder races watched and remembered why they had left humanity alone after their first encounters. The Vorum consensus updated their probability matrices, calculating that the Krethok Confederacy's fleet would be reduced below combat effectiveness within another 2 weeks at current attrition rates. The builders, silent and enigmatic as always, began construction on new defensive installations along their borders, preparing for the inevitable expansion they knew would come once humanity secured their home system. The Silithy sent an encrypted message to the Krethok fleet, desperately urging retreat before it was too late. Halvar read the message in his command chamber, alone and staring at casualty reports that made him want to weep. We have lost 4,000 ships, he said to the empty room. 4,000. And we have not conquered a single human world in there. Reinforcements continue to arrive while ours are 6 months away at best outside his window. Another human ship died gloriously, detonating its core to take a Krethok carrier with it. And Jalvar finally understood what the elder races had been trying to tell him. Humanity did not fight wars to win territory or resources. They fought wars to ensure their survival, and a species fighting for survival would sacrifice everything rather than surrender. The Krethak War Council convened aboard the Devastator in an atmosphere of barely controlled desperation, surrounded by tactical displays showing a situation that had deteriorated beyond anything their strategic doctrine could have predicted. Commander Jalvar stood before his senior officers, his scales dull with exhaustion and stress. We have been fighting for 2 months, he began without preamble. We have lost 6,300 ships, and we are no closer to controlling this system then. When we arrived, Vice Commander Throck, who had lost most of his swagger in the grinding warfare, added his assessment. Human reinforcements continue to arrive. We now count 9 separate colonial fleets operating in the system, each with unique technological advantages, and their combined coordination is extraordinary. Admiral Vrex pulled up a holographic display showing Earth, still untouched and defended by increasingly sophisticated orbital defenses. We cannot win this through conventional warfare, he stated flatly. Our fleet is being ground down through attrition, and human morale shows no signs of breaking despite casualties that would have shattered any other species we have encountered. Silence fell over the chamber as the officers absorbed the unspoken truth that Krethok's Confederacy was losing a war against a species they had dismissed as primitive eshel. Vor's mandibles clicked in frustration. Enraged then, we will employ unconventional warfare, he declared, his voice carrying an edge of desperation. If we cannot conquer Earth, we will make an example of it. We will show the galaxy what happens to species that defy the Confederacy intelligence officer. Krill looked up sharply from her station commander. You cannot be suggesting kinetic bombardment, Jalvar interrupted coldly. We will accelerate asteroids and debris too. Relativistic speeds and bombard Earth directly. We will not destroy the planet entirely, but we will render it uninhabitable for generations and show humanity the price of resistance. The shocked silence that followed was broken by Vrex's voice, heavy with warning that would be planetary genocide. It would unite every civilized species in the galaxy against us. Better to be feared than defeated, Jalvar spat back. Prepare the bombardment target, their major population centers, and industrial complexes. What followed next would be recorded in galactic histories as the moment when humanity revealed the true extent of their preparations. Krythok fleet began accelerating massive chunks of captured asteroids, using their gravity manipulation technology to aim them at Earth-like bullets from a cosmic rifle Earth defense. Command detected the bombardment preparation immediately. All hands. This is Command. The transmission went out across all human channels, and for the first time, the calm, professional tone was replaced by raw fury. The enemy is preparing to bombard Earth. We are activating all defensive protocols, and all ships are authorized to engage without restriction. Show them what happens when they threaten our home. 3 human ships broke formation and burned directly toward the Krythok bombardment fleet at accelerations that should have liquefied their crew's commander. The Krythok sensor officer called out an alarm. 3 human vessels approaching at combat speed. They are not slowing down. Jalver watched the tactical display, confusion mixing with realization. They are going to ram us, he breathed. Weapons. Destroy those ships before they reach bombardment range. The Krythok fleet concentrated fire on the approaching vessels. Plasma bolts and particle beams tearing into human hulls, but the ships kept coming. Their crews already dead from the acceleration and weapons fire, but their navigation computers locked on target. The first ship struck a Krythok carrier amidships, punching through the hull and detonating its reactor core in the ship's vital systems. The carrier broke in half. Atmosphere and crew venting into space. The second ship hit a bombardment vessel, destroying the gravity manipulators and sending the captured asteroid spinning off course. The third ship was destroyed seconds before impact, but its debris cloud struck with enough velocity to cripple the frigate's butt. The bombardment could not be stopped entirely. 7 massive chunks of rock, each weighing millions of tons, continued their deadly trajectory toward Earth. Then Earth revealed what it had been hiding for decades: the moon, humanity's ancient companion and the object of their first exploratory missions beyond their own world. Lit up with weapons fire, massive particle accelerators built into the lunar surface, disguised as scientific research facilities and mining operations, engaged the incoming asteroids with beams of energy that would have impressed even the builders. The first asteroid simply vaporized, sublimated into expanding clouds of gas and dust by focused particle streams. The second was deflected, its trajectory altered just enough to send it burning up in Earth's atmosphere over the ocean. 3 more were destroyed in similar fashion, the moon's hidden defenses proving far more sophisticated than anything the Krythok had anticipated. 2 asteroids got through the particle beam defense. Still on target for major population centers, orbital defense platforms, positioned in carefully calculated positions around Earth, opened fire with every weapon they possessed: missiles, lasers, even experimental weapons that humanity had been developing in secret. The 6th asteroid was shattered into fragments that burned up an atmosphere. The 7th broke through, heading directly for the sprawling megalopolis that covered much of eastern North America on Earth's surface. Ground-based defenses activated massive installations that had been built under the guise of power generation facilities revealed their true purpose: particle accelerators kilometers long engaged the asteroid at ranges that seemed impossible. Beams of subatomic particles striking with energies that physics said should not be achievable with human technology. The asteroid came apart 600 kilometers above the surface, fragmenting into pieces that rained across the Atlantic Ocean and unpopulated regions. Not a single piece struck a populated area aboard the Devastator. Krythok officers stared at their displays in stunned disbelief. They weaponized their moon, Throck whispered, his voice hollow with shock. They built military installations on their natural satellite and hid them in plain sight for decades. Jalver felt something break inside him, the last remnants of his confidence shattering like crystal under stress. How long have they been preparing for this? Krill reviewed historical data with shaking hands. Commander, based on construction techniques and technology analysis, some of those lunar installations are over 50 years old. They began building them almost immediately after achieving spaceflight. The implications hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Humanity had looked up at the stars, seen the possibility of hostile contact, and immediately began preparing for war they had never assumed they would be welcomed. Peacefully, they had always known that survival among the stars would require strength, and they had been preparing for this moment since before the Krethuk Confederacy had even identified Earth as a potential target, sir. The communications officer interrupted the stunned silence. We are receiving multiple transmissions. 16 different species have just declared war on the Krethuk Confederacy, citing our attempted planetary genocide as justification. Admiral Vrex closed his eyes, and so it begins. We have become the galaxy's pariahs. But humanity was not waiting for galactic justice to save them. The human fleets, now numbering over 800 ships with the arrival of the final colonial contingents, pressed their attack with renewed fury. Ships damaged beyond conventional repair were being patched together in real time by engineering teams, working in hard vacuum with nothing but magnetic boots and determination. Vessels that should have been decommissioned returned to battle within Horse-Krethuk crews, watched in horror as human ships they had crippled reappeared in combat formations. Hulls held together by emergency welds and determination. They will not stop, Vrex said quietly. Watching the human advance continue despite casualties that would have broken any other military force, they cannot stop. This is their home, and they will die to the last. All before they surrender it. Jalver stared at the tactical display, watching his fleet's strength fall below 4,000 ships, and knew that Admiral Vrex was right. The question was no longer whether the Krethuk could win. The question was whether any of them would survive to retreat. The battle for Earth ended not with a dramatic final confrontation, but with a whimper of desperation and defeat that echoed across the galaxy. Commander Jalver stood on the bridge of the Devastator, surrounded by the wreckage of his ambitions and the dying screams of his fleet, staring at a tactical display that showed the unthinkable. The Krethuk Confederacy's Grand Armada reduced to 743, functional ships fleeing in disarray. Toward the edge of the system, recall all forces, he ordered, his voice hollow with the weight of catastrophic failure. We are withdrawing from the Sol System. Vice Commander Throck, his scales marked with scars from a boarding action 2 weeks prior, did not argue, sir. What of the ships too damaged to make hyperspace transition? Jalver closed his eyes against the pain of the answer he had to give. They will surrender to human forces and accept whatever terms are offered. We cannot save them. The withdrawal began in chaos. Krethuk ships burning their engines at maximum to escape the relentless human pursuit, leaving behind wrecks and debris that would orbit the Sol System for centuries. As monuments to arrogance and miscalculation, the human fleet pursued to the system's edge, their ships running on fumes and sheer determination. But as the Krethuk remnants prepared to jump to hyperspace, something unexpected happened. Earth defense command transmitted a message to the fleeing Confederacy vessels. Krethuk forces. This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet, a human voice stated. Tired but firm, you are withdrawing from our system. We will not pursue beyond our territorial boundaries. But be aware that any future incursion will be met with the same response. There was a pause, and then the transmission continued with words that would puzzle. Krethuk strategists, for years we are transmitting coordinates. For medical supply caches, we have positioned along your likely retreat route, and we are prepared to negotiate prisoner exchanges at a neutral location to be determined to spawn within 6 hours if you wish to discuss terms. On the Devastator's bridge, stunned silence greeted this offer. They are offering us aid, Throck asked, unable to comprehend the gesture after what we tried to do to their world. Admiral Vrex, who had been quietly contemplating the nature of humanity throughout the long nightmare of the campaign, spoke with the wisdom of hard experience. They are showing us that they are not like us. They fought with absolute fury when we threatened their home. But now that we are retreating, they extend mercy. Jalver stared at the transmission, his mind struggling to process this final contradiction from the species that had defied every expectation except their offer. He ordered quietly, negotiate the prisoner exchange and accept the medical. Supplies or wounded deserve care. Even if we do not deserve mercy, the Krethuk fleet jumped to hyperspace, limping away from the Sol System, and behind them, Earth began the long process of counting the costs. Damage was severe beyond measure. 312 human ships destroyed, countless defense platforms reduced to debris, Orbital infrastructure around Mars and the outer planets heavily damaged, and most devastating of all, 6.3 million human lives lost. Memorial services were held across Earth in every colony. Names read aloud in ceremonies that lasted for days. Heroes honored and sacrifices acknowledged, but humanity had won. They had faced an armada that should have crushed them and turned it back through sheer determination and tactical brilliance. The galaxy took notice 6 weeks after the Krethok retreat. The Galactic Council convened for the first time in over a century, a gathering of elder races and established civilizations that normally avoided involvement in the affairs of younger species. The Council Chamber, a construct of technology so advanced it existed partially outside normal space, filled with representatives from across known space. The Salathi, graceful and luminescent, took their seats alongside the ancient Vorum, whose forms shifted with probability itself. The builders, mysterious and rarely seen, manifested as geometric patterns of light and shadow, and for the first time in the Council's long history, an invitation was extended to a species that had not even achieved interstellar travel a century. Admiral Chen stood before the assembled representatives of Galactic Station, still wearing the uniform she had worn throughout the battle, bearing scars from a hull breach that had nearly killed her during the final week of fighting the Silithi ambassador. Viren spoke first. Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Council, we extend our congratulations on your species' successful defense of your home system and offer formal recognition of humanity's right to self-determination and territorial sovereignty. Chen inclined her head respectfully. The people of Earth thank the Council for this recognition, though we would have preferred to earn it through peaceful contact rather than warfare. The eldest of the Vorum pulsed with colors that translated as wry amusement. Humanity has proven itself capable of both war and wisdom.
Oh.
We offer you a seat on this council, with full voting rights and all the responsibilities that come with such membership. We accept, Chen responded, without hesitation, but we accept on certain conditions. A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. Junior species did not typically negotiate with the councils. State your conditions. The Vorum elder invited, genuinely curious first. Earth will maintain full sovereignty over our home system, and any colonies we establish we will not cede authority over human territory to any external power, no matter how well-intentioned. Chen began, her voice carrying the steel that had seen her through the battle. Second, we reserve the right to defend ourselves and our allies by any means necessary. If threatened, we will not disarm or limit our military capabilities.
How?
Based on galactic opinion. Third, we demand that the Council establish clear protocols for first contact and rules of engagement to prevent conflicts like the one we just survived. No species should have to face what we faced, simply because they are young or perceived as weak. The Council representatives exchanged communications in frequencies beyond human hearing. Deliberating on these unprecedented demands, finally, the Builder representative, speaking in harmonics that bypassed language entirely to convey pure meaning, responded, your conditions are acceptable and reflect wisdom born of hard experience. We welcome humanity to the Council under these terms. As the formal ceremonies concluded and humanity took its place among the galactic community, other revelations came to light. The Silithi, in a gesture of reconciliation and respect, unsealed ancient records dating back 12,000 years. Ambassador Verine presented these records to Chen personally, her luminescent form dimming with remembered shame. Admiral, there is something you should know about our species. History with yours. The records showed Salathi exploration ships arriving at a planet called Earth when human civilization was still in its earliest stages, showing humans living in primitive settlements with stone tools. The records showed the Silithi attempting to claim the planet for resource extraction, and the records showed what happened next. Humans, armed with nothing more than spears and determination, fighting back with such ferocity that the Silithi expedition retreated after losing 40% of their forces. You tried to colonize us before, Chen said quietly, studying the ancient footage, and we drove you off with Stone Age technology. Verine pulsed with colors that conveyed deep regret. We did not understand then what we understand now, humanity's capacity for defensive violence transcends your technological level and always has. Your species has a saying, Varian continued, "Do not go gentle into that good night. You have lived by those words for your entire existence." Chen smiled grimly, "And we always will threaten our home, threaten our people. And we will fight with everything we have until there is nothing left to fight with. Which is precisely why we are relieved to welcome you as allies rather than enemies." Viren replied, "Sincerely, as news of humanity's victory and council membership spread across the galaxy. Civilizations updated their diplomatic protocols, the Krethok Confederacy, humiliated and broken, faced rebellion from conquered worlds and demands for reform from subject species, who saw that the Empire could be defeated within 2 years. The Confederacy would collapse into a collection of independent systems, many of which would seek defensive alliances with Earth Commander Jalver, in a gesture that surprised many. Appeared before an interstellar tribunal to answer for the attempted genocide he was sentenced to. Served humanity for the remainder of his life, working to rebuild what his forces had destroyed. When Admiral Chen visited him in his labor assignment, working alongside human engineers to repair orbital platforms, he asked her a question that had haunted him since the battle's end. "Why did you show us mercy?" He asked simply, "We tried to destroy your world, we killed millions of your people, yet you sent medical supplies and negotiated for our wounded." Chen looked at the Krethok commander, seeing not a monster but a soldier who had made catastrophic mistakes based on false assumptions because the war was over. She answered, "You were retreating, and killing you would have served no purpose except revenge, and revenge is expensive. We fight when we must, with everything we have," she continued, "but when the fighting stops, we remember that today's enemies might be tomorrow's allies. The galaxy is too dangerous a place to waste potential friends."